Alrighty. This is BIT. Chapter 12, number 33. I don't even have the question for it, but I figured we could still just talk through this document, make sense of where they're getting values, things like that. So, looks like we have some supplier countries here. We have event severity, low, moderate, high. They tell us that the payoff table includes losses. So the decision criteria must be reversed. I think what that means is like the higher the value in here, the higher the loss, which means the decision will be made by the value that is the least. Like if we see the least value, that's better. Okay. So let's start with just each row here. For Taiwan, obviously the maximum is 21 and the minimum is 8. Pretty straightforward. India max is 14, min is 6. Yep. Thailand max is 17, min is 3. Yep. Philippines max is 15, min is 5. Hopefully all those make perfect sense. Now minimum decision. Minimum would be the minimum of the minimums. The minimum of the minimums is 3. 3 is the lowest of these. Therefore, the minimum decision is 3. And I think the idea is, we're using the min of the min decision instead of the max decision because we want the least amount of loss, and that would be 3. So now min and max, worst case scenario of the maximums, the smallest of the maximums is 14. So we choose 14, that's the minimum of the maxes. Equal likelihood, there are 3 columns here. We could either have low, moderate, or high event severity. So what we do is basically do the sum product, or I guess basically it's just like this times 1/3 plus this times 1/3 plus this times 1/3, because there are 3 things split equally as 33%. So how do they do it? They do, I guess that works too. Is that the same thing? Oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's the same thing, just written kind of funny. Okay. Never thought about it like that. So it's finding the average basically of them, but this is the same thing as if you did 8 times 1/3 plus 11 times 1/3 plus 21 times 1/3, because it would be 8/3 plus 11/3 plus 21/3, which is equal to this. So anyway, they probably did that all the way down, right? There's this times 1/3 plus this times 1/3 plus this times 1/3. Anyway, same equal likelihood. It's basically, that's a good way to think about it though. It's just finding the average between the values here. Okay, so that's equal likelihood. Now, minimax regret. Let's break this down. Regret is likely the values that we see in this table here. So how do we find regret? Regret is where we look at each column. We find the, let's try it. We find the max, I believe. Is that what they did? I don't think so. Maybe they used the min. Yep. Interesting. Okay, so for regret, in this case, they've actually chosen the min because with this problem, again, the decision criteria is reversed. So typically with other problems, we're thinking, oh, let's choose like the max because the max is the maximum gain, maximum payoff. But really, the best choice we can make is the minimum. So we again, it's reversed. So we're thinking minimum here. So based on like this column, Thailand would be the best choice because 3 is the lowest. So everything's going to be relative to that 3 within this row. So instead of choosing the max, subtracting all these values from the max, we want to choose the 3. We want to choose the min and subtract all these values from 3, or find the difference between 3 and all those values. So what we do is do this minus 3 and get 5. 6 minus 3 and get 3. 3 minus 3 and get 0. 5 minus 3 and get 2. So did they calculate it? They did it. Yeah, so they just did like this cell minus the minimum of the column. Yeah, so really we could have done it manually. We could have just done equals, and we could have just typed this minus 3. Yeah, and then just drag that down and it should keep the values the same. Yeah. Okay, so then they do that all through the other columns. So what's the minimum of this column? 7. So 7 is going to be the reference point. We're going to do 11 minus 7, 4. 7 minus 7, 0. 12 minus 7, 5. 9 minus 7, 2. Same thing, this column. Minimum is 14. 21 minus 14, 7. 14 minus 14, 0. 17 minus 14, 3. 15 minus 14, 1. So these are our regrets. Alright, so what do we choose? Minimax, regret. Well, how does that work? So it looks like they just highlighted the maximums of each of these. Okay, so since we found the, I guess the idea is like we were calculating the minimum regret, right? Because we were subtracting the minimum from everything. So I guess it's just we find the max of each of these rows to get the max, and then the minimum of those maxes is 2. All right. I feel like there's not much more to say about that. It's just I'm like trying to understand it. I think I did pretty good with the minimum regret stuff, but then you're choosing the maximums of those regrets, and then you choose the minimum of those maxes. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe like what we were finding wasn't necessarily clocked as minimum regret. I think it's still just regret. Then we just happen to find the maxes of those regrets based on row, and then we just found the minimum of those maxes. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. And that was 2. So this would tell us, based on losses, based on regret, to choose the Philippines, because it would have the minimum amount of max regret, I guess. Equal likelihood would tell us to choose India. What is this one? Minimin decision would tell us to choose Thailand. Minimax decision would tell us to choose India. Yeah. All right. I'll leave it at that. Hope you learned something. Hopefully this is somewhat of a shorter video to learn from compared to the other ones. Sorry. All right.